I am Colin Bressler. I'm Josh. I'm with Josh Kaza, the great Josh Kaza, screenwriter extraordinaire. He was also he co-wrote Remy's Demons with me, but he also was the AD, script supervisor, and so many other things on the film.
Yeah,
So Josh, first off, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, Colin. How about yourself?
Good, man. So Josh and I are here to do a little series, kind of talking about the script and showcasing specific scenes. And we both sort of like talked on Gmail over Gmail about what scenes to do. So Josh, set up this first scene and sort of like what your thoughts are on it.
Well, we wanted to set up the scene as where it gives off that dark and gloomy vibe as the couple enters, pulls up to the driveway, and as they enter the house, and you hear like this voice going over, and the intro to Remy himself. You get the background where it's like, okay, he's mentally ill, right? But like, is it all just for show? You know, the boyfriend and girlfriend were going back and forth, and like their expression on their faces were felt with like such, intensity as he was explaining it in detail what the murder that took place at the Henderson house, which they're actually the location they're in. And like, some ghost tours, you get a guy who's like, a murder took place here, and a lot of people died. That's it. That's all you hear. And I wanted to make it feel where Remy actually knew in detail all the names of the people who got murdered, the actual house location, and give it such animosity where it's just like, oh man, that's, the couple just like dove right into it. Like they may ask a question or two, and you get like a vibe where Remy didn't answer. It's like, what? Come on, I want to know the details. And that gives a sign where his gestures are like, okay, there is something wrong with him, but like what, And he continues the tour of the house, and they're just filled with such anticipation. And then when you get locked in to that one particular scene where it's like he goes into further detail of the murder that took place, and they're just felt with like, oh man, okay, this guy's getting a little trippy. You know what I mean? It's like, so there is something wrong with this guy. You know what I mean? Does he love his job so much, or is this that, he's just playing out ballistic? You know, I thought we.
Yeah, and what's cool is like we so it's funny. It's not. It's an intro to a character, but it isn't, right? Because
Yeah,
we saw a young Remy, like a 7-year-old Remy,
correct.
but
Yeah,
but in a way, it is really right because it's the Remy you're about to experience because he's now in his late 30s,
yeah,
and I remember you and I were talking as we were starting out the process of writing and the whole thing, and talk about how to intro, how to start the film, and all those kind of things. And originally, that was the intro. It was supposed to be that it was that
yes, yes,
um,
I remember.
this scene that we're looking at. But so, talk to me about like from your perspective about setting up a movie and what this scene does. From your perspective for the character, what the purpose of this scene as a writer is.
Well, as you said, it's almost like a self intro to the character itself, and it gives it like the not only like a background of the character itself to where what he actually does for a living. So we know this guy does tours, ghost tours, and so it gives like the viewer like, okay, so is this we're gonna expect this throughout the movie, and are we gonna expect like an increase of that particular scene, or is it just gonna go off to another ghost story talks about something else? Is it actually gonna keep talking about this particular? Is it gonna be the storyline for the rest of the movie? And so I feel that with that intro of Remy himself doing all this, showing his characteristics and his love and passion for doing the ghost tour gives the viewer uh, a sense of like, okay, I can relate to that. Some people actually really like ghost tours, and it's like they're just locked in. They're just like, okay, I want to know what happens next. That's when I was writing it, as I put myself and be like, okay, if I did a ghost tour and I'm listening to a guide, it's like I want to, give me some details, give me some deets, man. And occasionally, some people just was like, yeah, a lot of people died here. Move on to the next location. But no, with him, you get to see and feel all the emotion that he's putting into it. And I feel very confident, I'm sure you do too, that we established the character of Remy himself in that particular scene.
Yeah, because I think that it's like, so you meet him as a kid and his mother, and they're doing this seance, and it's this insane kind of
Right.
intro. And people I've talked to about it have all talked about that they really like that the way to start the film that way. And people have told me, and I'm very happy, because that's what we wanted to do, is we wanted people to kind of get. But I believe, and I'd love to hear your response, because, by the way, anyone who doesn't know Josh has prolifically written a bunch of feature-length scripts. So it's not like this is his only one he's done or anything. So Josh is a prolific writer. And so it's like, to me, I ruminate a lot on how to start a movie. And I'm always like, oh man, but I do believe you have to start, even if it's not action, you've got to start with something that captures the audience. And everyone who's seen it that I know of has said they've been like, oh, I was like gripped right out the gate. I even had someone say, they were like, oh, I haven't finished it, but I started watching, and I couldn't, I didn't really think I was going to watch much. I just put it on, but the first scene captured me and I was in. And so the fact that it's like that, I wanted to talk really specifically for a second about that car scene. Because for me, those two characters are not main characters in the story. We never see them again. But I remember you and I talking, and the whole thing was about sort of setting up him almost like a mythological, like they're talking about him in this sense of like he's crazy or he's this. So talk a little bit about that if you want.
Well, okay. So like with that car scene, they pull up to the driveway and they pull up to the house, right? And you get the vibe where it's like, okay, so you promised to do this for my birthday, right? And she's like, yeah, but he's mentally ill or something. It's like, okay, so like you said earlier, like a mythological figure, it's like, okay, so we're talking about this guy in the third person in a way, and it gives off the vibe where it's like, okay, I don't want to go in the house, can we just like do it later? And he's like, come on, man, seriously, come on, babe. And I feel we did a really good job introducing him into that different realm spectrum, I feel.
Yeah, and it's like it sets it up, because we haven't met him at this age yet. We really probably mostly, you're engrossed in particularly Magda Porter's performance as Regan in that first scene is incredible. And it's like you're just like, and there's this little boy, and you're like, what? And then all of a sudden, there's like this punch of it sort of everything comes down to earth, and you're like randomly in this like in the front part of a truck, and these two people are talking. And so I really like that little flow that it has of like going from there. And I always remember when we were tweaking the script for Remy in the scene we're discussing, I remember both of us being a little concerned, because it's kind of long, and it's dialogue. And as writers, we both know that show don't tell is a big thing that we're like beaten down with. And it's like, it's always a concern, because you're like, oh my God, am I just writing myself into a hole here, or I'm overwriting a dialogue? Yeah. And it's like, because what he's saying doesn't have, what he says in that piece doesn't play out later, right? It's not something that it's like you said earlier, it's just strictly a character thing. We're just defining, it's like, here's this guy, and that pays off, right? Like he does do another tour, and then he does go with Robin, and they're investigating other places to do tours. And so with you, what was the challenge for you? Because the stuff you write is kind of big ticket, right? For lack of a better way of saying it, Josh writes kind of Stranger Things and Lord of the Rings, at least the two things I've read that come from that world, right? Those two different worlds, which are relatively large budget kind of world. when Josh got thrusted into my world, and Josh can
Sounds
attest to this. Josh can attest to this. I'm always like, Josh, always remember we have no money. Don't write.
yeah. I
So do
know.
you want to talk about the challenge of that for you, like as a writer, like being told you can't write anything in that's like not easy for me to shoot?
Yeah. As you said that earlier, man, I remember this one scene we were doing, and I went off the spectrum. Like I was like, dude, you should totally like put this in. He was like, you looked at me like, yeah, that's really good, for like, something like, $1 million movie, you know what I mean? It was like, gotta tone it down, man. Come back down.
what like just tell people that don't know, like what was your process for this film? I know you can tell me general process too, but like with this film, because you've never written with another person, right?
No, this is actually my first time, and I enjoyed it exponentially. Uh, as I went to like film school, so I never got a chance to collaborate with another writer. Always, you know, I got to introduce to you as a film director and a writer. And then when like you threw that idea at me, I was just like, let's do this, man. And writing alongside you and writing with another person, uh, I figured out my own faults and what I was good at. Like for instance, like still to this day, like my biggest challenge is with the dialogue. You know, I sometimes have to take a step back and say, is this what Remy was saying? Is this what Mildred was saying? And you even brought that to my attention a couple of times. And as I was a script supervisor on set, I would go with the actors and ask them, is like, you think this will be comfortable, or do you want to follow it, on the dialogue? And so they would give me their own points, and all talented actors and actresses, they had excellent ideas, and that helped me to become a better writer in this process of shooting Remy's Demons. And yeah.
No, it's cool. I mean, it's interesting hearing that from you. I will say this, and we'll wrap this segment up in a second. But what I find, like, so when we wrote it, right? So this is the director point of view. Is that so? We write this scene. This guy's giving a tour, right, over the thing. What I love, like, what really it was so much fun, and I learned a lot as a director about it. Is that so? It's if you look at Josh's script, our script, whatever, on the page, it's a bunch of words, and then it talks a little bit about his movements, but not a ton. And I know that when you write your other scripts, you put a lot of emotions, and you're very, what you're thinking. Yeah, you're articulating, like blocking and all that stuff. What's so cool about something like this is when there's a long passage of dialogue as a director, you can kind of play around with it. And so when you watch it, as you can see right now, it's probably playing, is I had a whole pattern once I had seen the kitchen and the landscape of the place that he takes. And I think it adds a lot to it, because I think that if he had just stood there and just spoken the words, you could do through sound design and other things, you can build up the tension in that. And it has its purpose, right? It can work. I think because he's moving so much, it adds to his character and his sort of dominance over the scene, because those two other characters are sort of just like at his beckoning call, and they're watching him walk around, and they're sort of like, what the, and then they watch him start to have pains, and he's experiencing all this stuff.
The fidgety and stuff.
Yeah, so it's just interesting from like someone who writes but also directs. When you take on someone like yours work and you're taking it in, there's going to be passages where Josh Kaza writes, whatever, the kids go into the haunted house, and you describe exactly, they walk in, one kid sort of ventures over to a grand clock and the other kids stay back. That was blocking. You're describing the blocking of that scene to me. I don't have to do that, right, as a director, but it's in there. And yeah, and a really good writer will define that in a character way that in a lot of ways forces me to do that blocking, right? Because then I go, Josh wasn't just writing that the kid walks over to the grand clock for no reason. He wrote that in because there's a character element to why that kid did that and the other kid stayed back. You know what I'm saying? So it's just really cool. I mean, I think like that's the cool thing about cinema, is that you people like us write it, and then it gets filmed and then edited and then all these things. So in closing, what is it like for you to see this movie? Because for the most of my understanding, you haven't probably seen any of your work made into film.
No. Oh,
And so talk about that as a writer. How has that been for you to like actually see like, you know,
the feeling is amazing. The struggles as a writer. Um, First off, like my passion was to be behind the camera, but as um, on the side, I always wrote regardless. But behind the camera was my passion, and I always wondered what the feeling would have been like if it would actually be made. And watching it was like, oh wow, man, I could have done that differently. Man, that's a awesome scene. Stuff like that. And I felt like another story was about to get a light bulb in my head, and it like kept me motivated. Like when you see your name on the credits and when you see the title and the picture of the art on the cover, it's just like, whoa, look at what I accomplished. You know, I can keep going on my passion. I can keep writing. I can keep going forward with all my other scripts. Like you said earlier, I have other scripts that are actually in film festivals and stuff currently, and I'm really proud of that. And I have to close it off with knowing all that. It, my biggest challenge, seeing my name out there and my have a future film. It's I guess every writer has this feeling. Will the next one be a success? You know, or will it just be a total bomb, or will it be a huge success? Will it kickstart my career? Um, would it continue to go beyond what you imagine it to actually be? And it, it's the feeling is just amazing. I truly love it. I really
that's
do.
incredible. Yeah, it's so funny. I have the same. I still, I mean, this is my technically my sixth feature length film. I still have the same exact geekiness. I mean, it's sitting right here, and I just like to look at it. I love to go onto the I love to
No,
go on the Amazon page and just look at it. And
likewise.
and and the thing is, like, I honestly like I'm 44. I don't want to lose that. I hope when I'm 65, I still feel that. Like I don't want to lose that. And I think, and in the same way you were saying, like what happens to me is I see like, I did Domestic Hell and then I was done that. And then like, I remember having this feeling of like, I want to do kind of a quirky movie, something a little lighter, something a little more horror genre, like fitting into the horror genre a little better, but quirky and different, and
Yeah.
find and investigate weird, interesting people. And honestly, Josh, like the biggest thing I'm proud of for both of us, and it literally is both of us, is that people really connect with Remy. And I know that like for you and I, for people like us, that's like, yeah, of course I wrote it. I mean, that's what I wanted, right? That is so much harder said than done.
Yeah.
For us to have set out to do that on a no budget scenario in the conditions that we did, and Josh was on, I'd say over 60% of the shoot days, if not more. To do that under those circumstances is like pretty incredible. I'm so proud of that. I hope I obviously you said you
Oh, yeah.
were, and you should be, because like to be able to create a character, a three-dimensional human being that someone sits down and takes their time to watch. And I've had people tell me like, man, I was like yelling at my screen for Remy, and I hated Mildred, and I was so angry at his mom, and I was like, I get choked up, man. I'm like, really? For our little movie? Like,
Yeah.
seriously? Like, and so, um, anyway, let's wrap up with this. Josh, tell everyone like what's next for you or what you're working on. I know that you just tell them about the film festival situation. That sounds insane and great.
Yeah, Colin. I guess roughly, as as you know, I'm never gonna stop writing, regardless. Like a lot of people ask me on occasion. It's like, okay, like for instance, my best friend doesn't. He's hesitant to watch the movie still. And I'm like, dude, come on, man.
Really?
Yeah,
Why?
because he's like, dude, what if I don't like it? And I was like, it doesn't matter if you don't like it. You know what I mean? I want your honest feedback. You know, and like I was saying earlier before I got sidetracked, um, people ask me, I was like, well, what do you do with the bad criticism? You know, and I tell them simply, it's like, well, without that, how am I going to know how to be a better writer? Because with their bad criticism, I get to find out what I can work on. If it's nothing but positivity, or it's like, well, I mean, either you're lying to me or you really enjoyed it. So my future as a writer, I'm never gonna stop. I have one
Yeah,
script,
what projects? Tell us about your project.
yeah, The Conqueror, which it was like my Frankenstein. It was my first one back when I was like 18, and God, I want to say like 11 drafts. It was this chaos. Originally, I didn't want to be a screenwriter. I wanted to be like a novelist. But then, as I did my research and I was going to school, I was just like, man, that's like really cool. Wouldn't it be awesome to just make movies? And so I turned that novel format into a screenplay, and there are so many errors, man. I was just like, oh my god. Uh, like, okay, it takes place in the 12th
Don't
century.
give too much away. Don't give too much away.
Well, okay, I will say this: like the character names are like modern, and they spoke modern, right? And I'm like, a colleague of mine, which is a friend of yours, he said, I don't think they would say that back in 12th century England. They're speaking formal like me and you are right now. I don't think they would talk like that. And I was like, oh man, I have to go back and proofread it and do another draft and another draft. It was this chaos. And I'm also currently doing two other outlines, because I have four novel scripts that I'm turning into screenplays, and so that keeps me occupied like daily. And rule of thumb, guys, it, this art and craft is really disciplined, like with the writing uh, perspective. Like for instance, Stephen King does like 8 to 5 writing, and one article I read was like at least give in like 1 hour a day. That way you continue at least get some progression, and that you're not slacking off. And I try to present all that ideas to myself as a writer to keep my creative juices flowing in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And as I said earlier, Josh is a rising star in the film world. I promise that. And he's him and I are also developing a sort of Game of Thrones ish type TV show. So because of COVID, it's taking more time than we wanted, but we'll keep, as he said, we will never stop. So. But yeah, well, thank you, Josh, and thank anyone who's checked this out. Let us know, both of us, if there's topics or stuff you'd want us to talk about in the future. We're also going to do another scene from the movie we'll be posting soon. And also go to Amazon Prime, check out Remy's Demons. Let either Josh or myself know what you think, because honestly, as he said earlier, man, feedback is everything. Like, I've been going on horror Facebook air groups and being like, tell me just anyone here, please watch it and let me know what you think, because we can't grow and learn. I have learned the most from really good, solid, critical reviews. That's how I've grown as a filmmaker. People have shredded me, but they did it in a good, positive way. And you're like, oh my God, that's so true. So anyway, thank you for watching. We'll be back with another scene soon.